Welcome, everyone. I am Dr. Alan Pietrobon. I'm the chair of the Global Affairs Department at Trinity Washington University in Washington, D.C. We're a women's college and a minority-serving institution in the nation's capital with a deep commitment to the education of women. And I have the distinct pleasure of introducing our event today, titled An Intergenerational Panel Confronting Poverty Through Diverse Lenses. Now, in this panel, we endeavored to bring together a number of diverse perspectives examining the issue of poverty in North America and in Africa. And today we'll explore both some academic research, but we'll also highlight the lived experiences of both our undergraduate students at Trinity, who will be presenting alongside some of the Sisters of Notre de Namur. We're graced by the fact that Trinity University was founded by the sisters back in 1897, and we've had a close partnership over these past 127 years. So we are pleased to join with them to present an intergenerational and an international perspective on topics such as how health and the environment play into the conversation about poverty. And we hope that today's discussion will aid in informing how the identity of women who are from historically marginalized groups has disproportionately placed many at a higher risk of living in poverty. So it is my great pleasure to introduce the speakers on today's panel. From the Sisters of Notre Dame de Namur, we will be joined by Sister Marie Josephine Abanda, who is based in Ottawa, Canada, where she's part of the Justice and Peace Parish Commission, assisting in rural women empowerment. And she's also recently undertaking her doctoral research on secondary school principal skills to promote education in deprived areas in the Democratic Republic of Congo. We're also pleased to be joined by Sister Eucharia Madukwe, who is from Nigeria and is the coordinator of the Women Empowerment Project at the Africa Faith and Justice Network. Previously, she was an associate and grassroots mobilizer at Network, a DC-based Catholic social justice advocacy group. And from Trinity University, we are joined by Carla Nunez Perez, who is a senior double majoring in public health and sociology, who focuses on decreasing disparities in health and within the healthcare system. We're also joined by Kayla Higgs, a senior majoring in global affairs, who works at the youth-serving civic education nonprofit Mikvah Challenge DC. Finally, our respondent will be Dr. Beth Blissman, who serves as the representative to the United Nations for the Loreto community, and who for over 25 years has worked as a practitioner scholar in community-engaged teaching and learning in higher education. We hope to have plenty of time at the end for Q&A, so please feel free to enter your questions throughout the panel using the Q&A button at the bottom of your toolbar. And I would like to begin to kick off this event by welcoming Kayla Higgs to open up our panel for the day.
Thank you, Dr. Petrovan, and hi, everybody. Again, my name is Kayla Higgs, and I study global affairs at Trinity Washington University. I'm also a minor in communications. And today I'll be talking a little bit about current statistics on North American women in poverty and to get an overview on how severe the issue is in North America and the United States, and how it impacts different groups of women, specifically women of color. So I want to look at this through an intersectional lens. But I thought first we should sort of contextualize women in poverty in a global perspective. So to begin, I wanted to show this chart, and this is from UN Women, and this shows the female population, meaning women and girls, living in extreme poverty by region, and this is 2022 statistics. So this is still during like the heart of the pandemic. We're still in the pandemic, so it's interesting to look at this. So according to UN Women, 388 million women are living in poverty. So that's that big first circle that considers the whole world. And then as you move forward, it shows you by region how many out of millions of women are affected by poverty. And as you can see, some of the um, some of the most women impacted by poverty come from sub-Saharan Africa, Central and Southern Asia, Northern Africa and Western Asia, and then Latin America and the Caribbean region, and Eastern and Southeastern Asia. And then it goes to Europe, Northern America, Oceania, and then Australia and New Zealand. So from this, looking at this chart, it clearly shows the disparity between geographic location of women, and a lot of the regions with high populations of Black women, African women, Latina, Hispanic women, and other populations of Asian women are obviously most affected by poverty compared to Europe and Northern America. And even in these sort of core or like global North states, a lot of the women living in poverty are still women of color. So, to put this into perspective, 1 in 10 women live in poverty globally, and this is also from the UN Women. And I think this is a pretty jarring statistic to think about. And now, because we're shifting to North America specifically, I would also like to know like, poverty looks different, of course, geographically, but also within North America, poverty looks different for different groups of women and families. And so when I was like a child, I didn't really understand obviously the difference between class, but growing up, it didn't seem like I lived in a working class family. Because obviously my mother was able to provide for me and was sort of able to shield me from the economic realities. And so I think that even though we still are working class and poverty doesn't look the same as someone else's life, it still is. And so I think, especially with the pandemic, a lot of women are unable to still shield their families from these sort of economic hardships. And poverty can also look like being unhoused or having lack of access to food, living in a food desert. So it's important to consider there's different ways and different factors that contribute to what poverty looks like. So moving on to North American women in poverty. So as a woman who lives in the United States, and as I said, I grew up in a working class family, and I've been surrounded by other working class people, like friends around me. I just wanted to focus on North American women because obviously living in the United States, I have more luxuries, but I still do live in an underserved community. And so I think that is also important to really highlight. Um, so let's go to the first statistic that was obvious to me, but is obviously unfortunate. And it's that the rate of women in poverty is higher than that of men. And so this is true for all racial and ethnic groups. So whether you're in a white racial group, Black racial group, or you're Hispanic, it's true for all racial and ethnic groups that women are in poverty more than men. And some of the highest rates are experienced by Indigenous women, Black women, and Latina Hispanic women. And this is from the Center for American Progress. And so, one of the factors that contributes to the rate of poverty is obviously the inability to afford higher education. And the reason why I hesitate to say access to education is because I think that there is access, but if all you have is access, but you don't have the financial means to sustain 2 to 4 years of college, that is obviously the actual burden is the inability to afford it. And obviously the inability to access good public education also contributes to that. Um, so I think that um, being able to afford college is a big factor into a lot of the reason why women are in poverty, especially in like the United States. And I experienced this myself because I was a transfer student from Pace University. And if you know, Pace is in New York and it's very expensive to attend. So it was refreshing to come to a school that is minority serving like Trinity because I was able to afford my education. And I go to Trinity not paying anything out of pocket. So they allowed me to achieve my degree versus going to a school that costs more, and I probably wouldn't have been able to sustain my education. Some other factors that contribute to poverty are the gender wage gap. So obviously women making less than men. And then as you go through women of color groups, they make less than white women. Lack of affordable healthcare or no affordable healthcare in some instances. Domestic violence and financial abuse. healthcare burdens, especially with the onslaught of the pandemic, and we're still living in the pandemic, as I said, so healthcare burdens are still there. And also, I think this factors in the healthcare that comes into being pregnant as well. And then lack of affordable housing or no affordable housing in areas, especially in gentrified areas like DC, where I live. And then climate change and lack of access to food. And climate change oftentimes exacerbates many of these factors that lead to people being in poverty. So a little bit more on some basic facts. So the first one, 15.5 million were living in poverty. Million women were living in poverty in the United States in 2022, and this is according to the National Women's Law Center. And then 10% of women in Canada live on low income, and this is from the Canada Women's Foundation, also from 2022. And then 36.9% of women in Mexico in 2022 live in poverty. And as you can see, like as you go to the global south or you go to Mexico, more women are in poverty. Again, going back to this idea that your geographic location can severely impact your susceptibility to poverty. So overall, women of color disproportionately face poverty. And so going back to the United States and like North America, the ratio of women in poverty to the total population of a particular ethnic group is extremely high. So that's what I mean by disproportionate, and that's compared to that of white people. So women of color experience the highest rates of unemployment. Native American women or Indigenous women experience the highest rates of poverty, followed by Black women and Hispanic or Latino women. And then women of color have lower rates of health insurance coverage. And as I said, health burdens can be a major cost of putting women in poverty. Um, Asian and white women are more likely to obtain a degree than other racial groups. And again, Asian and white women overall make higher income earnings than that of women of color, with the lowest earnings being within Indigenous and Hispanic women. And again, when we talk about Asian populations, there's obviously disparities and differences in who makes more depending on your geographic region and obviously the color of your skin. So why does this matter, right? So number one, it matters because we need to ensure that women and girls have equal access to higher qualities of life. If we want everybody to be able to sustain their life, not only financially, but be happy, we have to ensure that people have equal access to things and equitable access to things. So that's where that intersectionality comes in, is having equity versus equality in some instances. And then, so the SDG goals clearly focus on the elimination of poverty, achieving gender equality, eliminating hunger, which are all factors that significantly impact women. Um, and then moving forward, improving the family structure, because I know at some of the events, the family was mentioned. So improving family structure and lifting children out of poverty also comes with improving the lives of women, because oftentimes women are carrying the burden of providing for children and doing housework. So to improve the family structure, improving the lives of women matters. And then, according to the UN Women, more than 100 million women and girls can be lifted out of poverty if governments prioritize education, like I mentioned earlier. And again, going back to the family, prioritizing family planning, things like childcare and access to services or having actual services. And then fair and equal wages, as well as expanded social benefits. And then additionally, programs dedicated to gender equality represent only 4% of official development assistance. So this shows there is a gap between sort of the goals of helping women and girls and lifting them out of poverty and what is actually being done. So it matters because we still need to advocate and prioritize the livelihoods of women and girls across the world and in North America. So with that, I'm gonna pass it over to Sister Eukarya. She's one of the sisters of Notre de Namur, and she's gonna talk more about the experiences of women and girls and her work with the Justice Network Women Empowerment Project. So, Sister Eukarya, it's on you now.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I am Sister Eukarya Madueke, and I'm a sister of Notre Dame de Namur. Sisters of Notre Dame de Namur empower women and children in 5 continents through education. I am from Nigeria, and I coordinate the Women Empowerment Project of Africa Faith and Justice Network. I want to thank you for inviting me to this table. You know, as the saying goes, if you are not at the table, you are probably in the menu. So I am so pleased to have this table to highlight other ways African women can be empowered beyond providing finances or economic empowerment. I'm here also to share with you what sisters are doing to build strong institutions in Africa. My expertise and work is in advancing strong institutions in Africa that will operate with integrity and efficiency. Institutions that will ensure that both the community and the government do their part to ensure that the dignity of all people, especially women and children, are protected. Institutions working towards reducing women poverty. Without strong institutions, poverty and exploitation of women will continue to remain at the status quo, and poverty will never be reduced. Allow me to share with you a personal experience how lack of strong institution advances women poverty in Africa. My religious community had a project, microfinance project and skill training project. But believe you me, this has not reduced the problem of the poverty of these women, because these women come as a group to borrow money, to go for trading. As they go out, they are faced with police extortion, they are faced with kidnapping, they are faced with all sorts of health issues that takes away the money. They are rather put into more debt than they come into the program. The young girls are trained in skill training. Most of them make soap, clothing, and they take it to the market to sell. But because of cheap materials from China, these young people could not compete in the market, and they end up in poverty again. For this reason, I strongly believe that we need strong institutions to ensure that all barriers and obstacles are removed, and that government system is in place to advance better economic outcome for women. My work is to train African sisters in advocacy, mentor and accompany them as they engage systemic change, as they engage structures that threaten the dignity and rights of the people, particularly women and children. My work involves strengthening these voices and the agencies of sisters to hold their leaders and government accountable, and to dismantle social and cultural norms and barriers that stand in the way of women and girls' progress. I love doing this work because the sisters are increasingly and fearlessly reclaiming their voice and agency in the public square. They are expanding their socially assigned and traditional role of providing services to the vulnerable women and children, to actively engage in structures that oppress these women and children. I am happy doing this work because the sisters are influencing changes in their communities, just like their foremothers did in 1929 in Nigeria, when women worked together to end the colonial policies that counted women as taxable objects. the plan to impose tax on market women, and the appointment of warrant chiefs that were very oppressive to women. Our empowerment program is rooted in African proverb that says, when spider webs unite, it ties up lion. Catholic sisters who are credible agents of change are brought together in commitment to work for systemic change. We have done this, and we have succeeded in mobilizing sisters from different religious communities and professions, train them in advocacy, principles of Catholic social teaching, contextual social analysis, which includes looking at social norms, social institutions, and government institutions as they impact women and children. We established sisters network at local, regional, and national levels, and ensure that they engage their issues as network. We mentor and accompany this network of sisters and facilitate their efforts to build a coalition with other women organizations, with the youth, other local NGOs, and they conduct advocacy in communities, schools, religious institutions, even in the mosque, churches, public squares, media houses. Since this project started in 2016, we have been able to train over 5,000 Catholic sisters in Kenya, Nigeria, Uganda, Zambia, Ghana, Malawi, Tanzania, and DRC, Democratic Republic of Congo. Our long-term dream is to have a network of sisters advocates at African Union. These sisters network have been carrying out advocacy activities in various countries in the following areas: engaging government policies and cultural norms harming women and children in their communities, educating communities, women and girls on global and national laws that protect them from exploitation, raising public awareness and holding advocacy events on issues surrounding the exploitation of women and girls, young people in general, such as human trafficking, early and child marriages, and domestic servitude, child unsafe migration, teenage pregnancy, and all forms of sexual exploitation of women. Advocating against corporate land grabbing that hurts the economic security of women and dislocates families. Advocating for water access for rural community, as lack of access increases women's vulnerability. Engaging environmental pollution and degradation, given that climate change has a greater impact on women and children. The sisters' sustained advocacy effort has led to policy and legislative reforms in Nigeria, Tanzania, Ghana, Zambia, Uganda, notably. The passage of anti-trafficking law in Edo State, Nigeria, which enabled law enforcement agencies to seize properties from traffickers and arrest 20 traffickers, was as a result of sisters' advocacy in Edo State. Sisters were also invited to be part of the state anti-trafficking task force. The restoration of confiscated water source. A stream was confiscated by a multinational company in Tanzania, a place called Muyimbi. But with the advocacy of the sisters, this water was restored again. And the women don't have to go long distance to fetch water. They now fetch from their stream. Their advocacy has also resulted to establishment of family courts to address child abuse cases in Enugu State, Nigeria. The setting up of mechanisms to rescue vulnerable girls in Tamale, Northern Ghana. The adoption of policy in Zambia that led to preventing over 200 young people from being trafficked and the arrest of over 20 suspected traffickers. Putting up a policy in place to monitor the practice of recruiting young girls in rural Tanzania and Nigeria and Ghana to go to the city to provide services. Additionally, the advocacy activity of the sisters have raised the profile of African sisters and given them a voice in the public square. Civil, religious, traditional, and political leaders recognize the sisters as advocates for the vulnerable member of the society. For instance, in 2019 in Uganda, after the sisters have raised the awareness that the labor law in Uganda does not prevent exploitation of young people, the government invited two sisters to be part of reviewing this law to make sure that the law has some kind of human rights face. The government and the community now see the Sisters Coalition as an important, credible, non-partisan moral voice in the public square. One that advocates for the right and dignity of the vulnerable member of the society, regardless of belief, ethnicity, background, or social standing. In our recent advocacy visit to Malawian Minister for Trade and Industry, the minister again emphasizes the importance of the voice of the sisters in the public square and asks the sisters to partner with him in public education. He said to the sisters, when you sisters speak, the people listen, but when we politicians speak, the people do not listen. For lack of time, I will stop here and I will look forward to your questions at the end of our presentation. I now invite Kyla to speak on women's health in North America. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm going to be sharing my screen. Okay. So, hi everyone. I'm going to be talking a little bit more about the intersectionality of poverty and health and gender, specifically focusing on the issue in North America. So Professor Petrovan did a good job at introducing me, but in case everyone forgot, my name is Carla Núñez Pérez, and I'm a Mexican immigrant here in the United States. I'm currently a student at Trinity Washington University, and I'm double majoring in public health and sociology with a minor in language and cultural studies. My passion definitely centers on addressing disparities within health and the healthcare system. I've done a lot, most of my research that I've done here at school focuses on women's health. I'm currently working on a research paper with a professor on HIV relating to women of color living with HIV. And hopefully in the future, I hope to get my master's degree in health policy and work on policy efforts starting at the local level. So now to get started on more of a general idea of women's health globally, as many of you guys know, sex and gender have significant implications on health outcomes for both men and women and non-binary folks as well. According to the World Health Organization, both discrimination and social cultural factors have a significant burden on women's health globally and is of concern today. Some of these social cultural factors include inequality and power relationships, whether that be in the workforce or in interpartner relationships, decreased access to education and employment opportunities, which just leads us to the third point, which is poverty. There's also physical, sexual, and emotional violence that takes place as well. Oh my. Sorry, I had a mishap right there. Women living in poverty globally. I wanted to share this graph. I think Kayla did a good job at highlighting some of this information as well. But as you can see in sub-Saharan Africa, 41.2% of their women and population is living in poverty today. As we go down and we focus on Northern Africa and Western Asia, that number goes down about half, with 22.6% of the women population living in poverty. And then when we look at Northern America, which is what we're focusing on in my presentation, 14% of the women population is living in poverty. And although we can see that in continents like Africa, the rates of women living in poverty are much higher, I think it's significant and critical to also highlight those women in Northern America that are also living in poverty. As long as the numbers are not at zero where we ideally would want them to be, I think it's still a topic of concern that needs to be discussed. So Northern American women living in poverty. So according to the Center for American Progress, in the US, out of the 38.1 million people living in poverty, about more than half of those people are women. So 56% of the people living in poverty are compromised by women. In Canada, this trend is followed very closely as well, with 56% of individuals being women that are living in poverty, and in Mexico coming close with 36.9%. So as we can see, there's this trend of women being the highest group living in poverty, not just in the continent of Africa, but also here in North America as well. Women of all races in the US are currently experiencing higher rates of poverty when compared to men of any race. And those are highest among women of color, which are American Indian and Alaskan Native women, Black women, and Latina women. And I think Kayla did a good job at highlighting that stat as well. As we know, women take on a lot of roles and a variety of roles. They're mothers, they're daughters, they work, they're wives. So a lot of their priority when it comes to these women living in poverty is not going to be healthcare and personal healthcare for them. A lot of their financials goes to food and childcare, for example. So their personal healthcare is often not a priority. Not to highlight some of the top health issues impacting women today, and this is on a global scale. Many of these issues are relating to cancer, and those are preventable cancers, which can often be detected early on with yearly checkups. But obviously, with women living in poverty, they're not getting these yearly checkups, and things like cervical cancer can lead to deaths of these women as well. Reproductive health, maternal health, HIV, sexually transmitted infections, violence against women, not only interpersonal partner violence, but also violence in the workplace, mental health, non-communicable diseases, being young, so pediatric health services are lacking, and getting old, which is geriatric care as well. So what is being done in North America? There's a lot of advocacy going on, not just in North America, but globally as well. There's a lot of community-based organizations that are doing a lot of this hard labor and hard work to get the services to women in need that need them. And also they're doing a lot of this education and just educating the general public on issues that are happening and gender-based issues that are happening to women and women of color living in poverty. To highlight some advocacy efforts, we know that advocacy highlights critical issues happening as we speak. So it promotes action and change, and that's policy change as well. And considering I am Mexican and I'm a proud Mexican here living in the United States, I wanted to highlight a win that a lot of women had in Mexico recently. So due to a lot of this advocacy efforts that Mexican women had all over Mexico, last year on September 7th, 2023, the Mexican Supreme Court of Justice decriminalized abortion on the federal level. So this helped women all over Mexico have access to reproductive health services without putting their life at risk. So a lot of these women were receiving these reproductive care services on the street or from supposed quote unquote clinics that weren't really clinics and being performed by non-professionals and putting their life at risk to get these services. So now with this decriminalization of abortion, these women can access these services on a much safer scale, which I think is a win to highlight for advocacy efforts in Northern America by women and led by women in the health sector. So in relation to on-the-ground work and education, we know that a lot of these issues that are being faced by women and that were not started by women, but are rooted on these systemic, there's discriminatory systemic systems. But oftentimes women are the ones that have to fix these issues. And that's the case with community-based organizations. A lot of these organizations are led by women and have continued to lead efforts on the ground, providing critical and essential services to women in need in North America and globally. They aid in educating the public on critical gender-based issues. So some of these services that these community and local organizations provide that are very essential to improving the health outcomes of women living in poverty are services in relation to healthcare, to childcare, HIV and STD testing, mental health services for women who are dealing with trauma or any issues in that regard, food pantries for women who maybe don't have the funds to be able to purchase food for their family, diaper banks, cooking classes, and nutritious cooking classes for maybe young moms, career readiness and job search services, primary care referrals, teenage pregnancy education, and financial literacy workshop. And we know that a lot of these organizations are doing these efforts as we speak. So I definitely wanted to highlight their efforts that they don't go unnoticed. And on that note, even the UN Women have noticed that women rights organizations are critical to tackling gender-based discrimination in all sectors, whether it be education and health. They provide life-saving services to survivors of gender-based violence, for example. They drive policy change both in the domestic and global scales. They reduce gender-based violence, and they play a very essential role during health and humanitarian emergencies. And that's definitely seen today and what we're living in with the genocide that's going on in Gaza, for example. A lot of these women, a lot of these people on the ground that are helping families and kids in need are led by women. So I think that's definitely important to highlight in their efforts as well. With this in mind, it's essential to fund these organizations who drive social, economic, racial, and environmental change. A lot of these organizations, for example, is the Sisters of Notre Dame that are doing this on the ground local work, providing women with these services, whether it be health or in education. I think it's important to highlight and also fund so women are better off. And I wanted to end by just highlighting the impact that Trinity Washington University has. Trinity is committed to the education of women by advocating for equity, justice, and honor in education. It serves primarily women of color and empowers them to become the change makers they need and to achieve equity in all sectors. So this institution was founded by the mission of the Sisters of Notre Dame de Namur, and it's still very much centered on those ideals. It's committed to the education of women in the liberal arts and has grounding in the mission of the sisters and the Catholic tradition. It welcomes people from all faiths in order to achieve the larger purpose of learning in this human search for meaning and fulfillment. So Trinity has helped me a lot and just empowered me in a lot of different ways to keep advocating for the health of women domestically and also on a global scale. And without Trinity, I think that I wouldn't have the opportunities that I've had. I wanted to include these pictures. We were just recently, we're at the UN in New York and had the opportunity to have a seat at the table at these sessions with mostly have been predominantly men and predominantly white individuals, and having Trinity supporting us and the Sisters of Notre Dame as well just empowers us to keep on this mission to continue fighting for equity and justice, whether it be in health, whether it be in education, in all sectors. So with that being said, I want to thank you for your time, and I want to hand it over to my colleague, Sister Marie Josephine, who will be sharing lived experiences with rural women in the Democratic of the Congo, entitled Associations and Income Generating Activities and Endogenous Strategy for the Empowerment of Women in Rural Areas.
Thank you, Carla, for passing me the word. I think that we are all here because we have a common consent, that of women's poverty and empowerment. I am Marie-Joséphine Ibanda, a sister of Notre de Namur from the Democratic Republic of Congo, but located in Canada for the time being. I was a secondary teacher, and now as an academic researcher, my interests are the making of socially just and inclusive schools in the Congo. Today, I would like to share a lived experience with a group of Congolese rural women who are struggling to create living conditions that respect their dignity and to become more financially autonomous. This sharing aligns with a statement of the former General Secretary of the United Nations, Antonio Guterres, at the 2021 Africa Day, when he said, "The cultural richness of Africa may constitute a solid foundation of its economic progress." Before I get to the heart of my speech, especially considering this week is the 68th Status of Women Conference at the United Nations, women and girls are at the center of many reflections. I invite us to keep a minute's silence in memory of all the women around the world, especially those in east of my country, who for 3 decades have been savagely and brutally raped, mutilated, and killed for purely selfish reasons. I would like us to remember Sister Dorothy Stang, a sister of Notre Dame de Namur, who was assassinated in Brazil as she was fighting against destroying the Amazon forest and for the rights of the poor.
Thank you, sister, and thank you everyone for giving this moment of silence.
Thank you, Drea. So, since the 1970s, poverty has worn a face, or rather a mask, that of women and girls who have not been to school or who have not attained a certain level of education, those who do not have a paid job or do not earn equal wages with their male counterparts, and who therefore are financially dependent. Since then, women's empowerment has become more than ever a hobby horse of many national and international NGOs. To do this, two paths are strongly supported and are becoming more prevalent. On the one hand, we find a linear model that includes the following 5 steps. 1, education. 2, work. 3, equal pay. 4, personal being. And 5, national or social development. On the other hand is the international aid from rich countries to poor countries through investment. As recently as last month, UN Women argued that an increase in investment of more than 300 billion of American dollars would accelerate women's empowerment. Despite undeniable progress around the world, these two main approaches to women's economic empowerment have also shown limitations. Indeed, for several decades, the discourse on women and poverty have not changed so much, and the same solutions are suggested and tried again and again. If we look closely, and for those of us living in these communities, we can see that the planning and execution of international aid is a new form of colonization, a way of controlling the beneficiaries that makes them eternally dependent. While international aid to poor countries, especially for women's economic empowerment, often falls short of the real targets, especially rural women. From my personal experience, this cycle turns them into dissatisfied wait-and-see voters. Instead of teaching them how to fish, they are given fish on a tray, to paraphrase a Chinese proverb. In fact, increasing a person's skills is more beneficial to them than one-time help or charity. Moreover, as Seydou Ouattara, a researcher from Ivory Coast, noted, international aid projects and actions carried out in poor countries, especially in rural areas, do not take into account or into consideration the social cultural context of women and deprive them of their status of social actors, that's preventing them from accessing strategic resources which actually lie in them and in their communities. And when it comes to empowering African women, culture is the bête noire to be eliminated. Many African cultural values and practices seem to be rejected and are very rarely incorporated into these types of international aid projects. Therefore, I think that the time has come to reconsider other avenues, including international financial aid, and to consider the new paths, especially taken by rural women living in these communities and already doing this work for their empowerment. I would say we need to mix all those approaches. In fact, nowadays, in many countries in Africa, women are organized into associations built on values such as solidarity, mutual aid, and sharing, while in the meantime, exercising income-generating activities. Having become aware of these realities in 2012, me and fellow sister of Notre Dame de Namur, Sister Isabel, launched the movement of women's association called Solidarity, Savings, and Credit Groups in the 3 rural areas where we worked in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Now, this group together have become the support center for the advancement of women. The objectives of the group are to get women to support each other to meet each other's needs. This is the meaning of solidarity in short. Learn about financial literacy and build a pooled fund. Get initiated with the banking system by carrying out banking operations like savings and credit. To create income generating activities and making financial decisions. The structures and functioning of the groups. Each group should be composed of no more than 25 women who know each other very well and belong, but not exclusively, to the same category like employees, shopkeepers, and farmers. And we need to keep in our mind that in African rural areas, especially in the Democratic Republic of Congo, most women are farmers. At the first meeting, the group will choose a president, a vice president, a secretary, and an assistant secretary, and 3 cashiers. They will define their own rules adapted to the general model. They will determine the amount of money that each person must contribute every 2 weeks or monthly, one amount for the Solidarity and Mutual Aid Fund and another for the bank fund. A member may deposit double or triple the amount determined in the bank, but not more. The most important thing is that women are encouraged to take credit from the bank fund and start an income-generating activity such as livestock or small business, but under the watchful eye and the support of other members. This loan must be repaid with a percentage of interest after the maturity date set by the group. And the Solidarity Fund is used to respond to emergencies of women or the members, like illness, death, or a new birth in the family. So initially, they will determine the duration of the first cycle, going from 6 to 12 months. After this cycle, they open the cash register to hand over their savings and interest to each of them and start a new one. Or they can start another cycle for a longer duration without opening the cash box. The members may decide to make a joint investment through agricultural or commercial activities. In addition to financial and economic activities, women who have the skills, each one in her own field, give lectures on selected themes. We have nutrition, food security, STDs, hygiene. The result achieved, among other things, the financial power acquired by the women attracted the attention of women and men from other villages that they in turn wanted to join the groups. As you can see on the pictures, the advantage of working in group is that they can farm a large space and harvest a big quantity of agricultural products than they would need if working individually. These associations set up in big cities like Kinshasa, the capital of the country, offer to women opportunities for entrepreneurship, constructions, foreign trades. Indeed, at this level, Kinshasa women who are members of these associations will collaborate with other women from other African countries for trade and knowledge sharing. However, those women in rural areas still have their work cut out for them when it comes to exercising leadership. So, in fact, having been for a long time led by their parents and their husband. They seem lost when it comes to lead others. Also, the lack of good roads toward big cities is a huge barrier for them to evacuate and sell their agricultural products. So we need to focus on training and encouraging women to take on leadership tasks and get them advocating for good infrastructures. To finish, I would like to say that this great achievement show what women can achieve by cutting out the Middle Ages aid. I will also strongly urge every one of us involved with women to listen to them and trust in them and in communities, and to provide support for what they need versus dictating what they must do. So now I would like to introduce our respondent, Dr. Beth Blissman, who will be leading us into a rich discussions and open it up to a Q&A period. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sister Marie Josephine. And deep thanks to you for especially leading us in a moment of silence in memory of our sisters and all the women who have given their lives for other people, other humans, other species of life, important places on our one planet like the rainforest, upon whom we all depend on a daily basis for our livelihood. In many ways, science, mainstream Western science, is just now catching up with indigenous perspectives who have talked about these interconnections all along.
Yeah.
We are just now learning all the interconnections that we share. So I wanted to briefly thank all of you for this incredibly inspiring panel. The goal of today was to consider the intersectionality of social and environmental challenges, looking at poverty from a human rights perspective globally. I deeply appreciate starting out. I appreciate the global character of how you chose to present. And just a quick word about myself. I currently am grateful to serve as the United Nations representative for the US-based Loreto community, although we also have sisters in Pakistan. So we are an international community of Catholic sisters and co-members. I've been a co-member of Loreto for 28.5 years. We've had a presence here at the UN for 33 years, and I've had the good fortune of serving as the UN rep for the past 7 years for both the Loreto community and the Sisters of Charity of the Blessed Virgin Mary of Dubuque, Iowa, which is a US-based congregation. And I so admire the work of the Sisters of Notre de Namur. I did some consulting back when I worked in higher ed with one of your universities in California, and I'm thrilled to get to know some of you now at Trinity, as well as the work of some of your sisters. I've joined this group as kind of a coach along the way at the request of Sister Isabel Ezeka, who is just starting her tenure as the new United Nations representative for the Sisters of Notre Dame de Namur. So I'm deeply honored to give just a few reflections about your time. And I really wanted to thank you, Kayla, for starting us off with the data, right, globally about gender inequality, and also about the US and Mexico and Canada, plus more importantly, your own story about how poverty plays out, especially in terms of access, right? Access to food, to clean water, to healthy food, access to affordable education, which is so incredibly important, not to mention healthcare, equal pay for equal work, etc. And thank you for reminding us, and this is especially important for me to keep in mind every day as a white woman in this country, not just the global inequity, but the inequity in every single country and community about how women of color are disproportionately facing poverty, no matter whether they're in the global north or the global south. The highest rates of unemployment, of poverty. You didn't mention as much violence, domestic violence, not to mention emotional and intellectual violence that's done because of implicit bias, right, by those in the majority. But there's so many organizations and good groups I know here in the US working with survivors of sexual violence, of domestic violence. I'll lift up the work of the Angel Band Project, which is here in New York City, as well as St. Louis, as well as Seattle, Washington, which is a unique organization that works with survivors of sexualized violence to help them heal through music therapy. And they are doing really wonderful work. They were founded by some graduates by a Loretto High School. And so I'm hoping that one thing that can come out of this session is more sharing among the different groups here, because I know we have several sisters on the Zoom audience, and I look forward to their questions and thoughts, and we can all share some of our best practices, right? You also reminded us that women of color experience the lowest levels of health insurance and good health coverage and the ability to obtain a college degree or advance in the workplace. So as we all lobby our governments and advocate, we do need to prioritize education, family planning, fair and equal wages, expanded social benefits. The list goes on, right? And then hearing from Sister Eukarya, and then later in the program, Sister Marie Josephine, the stories that you were telling of the resilience of African women and the stories of the ways you have created organizations to confront and challenge and work around the lack of international development funding. Well, that's just incredibly inspiring. I would love to hear more from you both about the ways in which African values, which I believe personally, just from the friends I have and know in Africa, I think are in many ways far superior to mainstream white Western values in terms of the survival and thriving of us all on one single planet, right? I'd like to hear more about African values and how they can be integrated more into programs that support and empower women, and your points about how development aid needs to be contextual, right? It needs to take into consideration what's happening at the place where the development aid is being given, not just kind of try to impose, you know, especially US based, or dare I say Gates Foundation based ideas of what should happen, you know, from a white Western perspective on a whole different place in the world. So I'd love to hear more from both of you about that. And I so appreciate, Carla, the way that you talked about the intersections of poverty, health, and gender, and a bit more about your own story too. I am totally excited to hear and follow you as you go on for a master's in health policy and make a huge difference in the world with your great research skills. You know, and thank you also for giving a good and appropriate nod to the government of Mexico, which just legalized access to safe and accessible abortion services for women last fall. I'm sure there are many US women who are going to now be planning trips to Mexico for many reasons. So these stories are inspiring. They bring together those of us who are already working on the issues, and it's important for us to keep our hope alive and support each other as we continue this work. I see I have a comment or a question in the Q&A in French. And it looks like it's about the violence of women. Now, personally, I don't speak French, but I do know my friend Sister Isabel does. And so, Sister Isabel, I'm wondering if you could perhaps ask that question in English. Ah, good. There we go. And here we have a translation in the chat. Sometimes in life, all you have to do is ask for things and they appear. How can we eradicate poverty and violence against women in our various ministries at a time when global warming is worsening poverty in our world? That is an excellent question. Why don't we start with that one, and then we can continue the discussion. We'll ask people to put your questions in the Q&A section, or if you can't find that, go ahead and put them into the chat and we will find them. And so I'll open up that question to anyone on our panel who would like to start with an answer.
I think it'd be good to hear from one of the sisters, since they're the ones that are doing this on the ground work, and they're the ones giving these services to these women. So I would like to, I think that'd be the best. And I think Sister Yukira wants to answer, so she can go ahead.
You know, I just came back from Nigeria, where at 8 p.m. it was 103 degrees. It was hot. It was killing. I mean, I couldn't just imagine the heat. But, you know, I think the only way we could do is to keep advocating for a better environment. And I know in DRC, 3 years ago, when the sisters were mobilized, and they knew that the only way to reduce violence, because, you know, when you are hungry, when you are hot, the tendency is this anger and fight. But if we can really reduce poverty, reduce the heat, and we have a way of doing that. In, you know, when you look at the environment and the causes of the heat, we know that the weather, the environment, the climate is changing, and we know what is causing the climate. And the only thing I think we can continue to do is to keep advocating. Going to our government, we went to the government of Kinshasa, the governor of Kinshasa in 2 years ago. The sisters mobilized and they went to him and they said, this is killing. Are we all going to die of you know, the heat, the anger that comes with this? And as soon as the governor heard the sisters, Isabel can testify that immediately after that advocacy visit, the first thing the governor did was to announce cleanup for Kinshasa, plastic, announced there should be reduction in the use of plastic, and the whole Kinshasa was cleaned up. I don't know what is happening now, but at least within that time, the governor of Kinshasa, where if you go to Kinshasa, oh my God, the number of plastic pollution is just too much. Then I also know that some of the sisters took steps to do activities in their schools, in their communities that will reduce plastic. I know in the SND community, SND school, Sisters of Notre Dame school, they began to plant trees. They even made a law that no child should be drinking all these drinks that come on a plastic. They plant economic trees where they can produce their own juice for the student, for the children. And, you know, doing this is really encouraging because it's also going to create local job for the people. So that's just a little answer I can give to that question.
Excellent.
Excuse me.
How about we go to Sister Marie Josephine first, and then we'll go to Sister Isabel, who also has her hand up.
Thank you, Beth. I would like just to complete and to write up Sister Eucharia about how we can resolve or overcome poverty and climate change through our diverse ministries. I think, as she said, for me, I would sustain that resolving a problem is to targeting the causes than the consequences. Poverty is a consequence of human being activities, and climate change as well is a human activities consequence. So the only way that we can get to a solution is to advocate and to make pressure on our government so that they have to define or to make policies about environment, how to use it, how to treat it. And if we have some occasion, why not attending the international organizations who are dealing with the climate change issue? So the advocacy is the only way, and in the ground, do what you can do, like as Sister Eucharia said. Myself, I did it when I was in the secondary school, growing trees in the school and educating people. We are farmers, as I come from a rural area. People will cut the farm in the forest and in the bush. So we have to lead them how they can do it. Indeed, this is the only source of their income and their food, but they can do it in a professional or in a way that respect also the environment without destroying it at once. So thinking of the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sister Marie Josephine. Over to you, Sister Isabel. Would you like to say something? You'll need to unmute. You're still muted. We can see your lips moving, but you'll need to unmute yourself. We're still not hearing you, sisters. Oh, try now, Sister Isabel. Alas, we are not getting any sound from you. Perhaps you could type your comment into the chat. And Sister Eucharia, you still have a hand up. Did you want to say something else? And you're muted. So if you do want to say something else, please unmute yourself. Otherwise, we'll move to Kayla. Okay, Kayla, please, over to you.
Okay, yeah, so I just wanted to also echo what Sister Eucharia and Sister Marie Josephine has said already, really about localized efforts. So I'm like a firm believer that localized efforts can really help communities specifically living in poverty. And as Dr. Petrobon mentioned earlier, I work at a nonprofit, and one of our alum actually owns another nonprofit where they're currently building a grocery store. It's called the Community Grocer in Philadelphia. Oh yeah, they're really cool. We're actually gonna meet with Eli, the owner, in April. But the project is really to address food poverty in Philadelphia and obviously food deserts there. So I think not only using localized efforts like that and like the planting of the trees, maybe building filtration services, things like that, but also utilizing young people, because young people are on the ground really doing the work. And they're really, really passionate about climate right now. So getting young people involved in whatever projects you have going on can definitely see like progress in addressing like community climate and like how that affects communities. And I think it also matters though to address and lobby for clean energy and actually tackling corporations who are polluting our environment. And so I also think this includes the return of land ownership to people in these communities, to indigenous people, to people who live in like African countries that are getting like their resources depleted from them. I think land ownership is super important, and we need to start looking at how we can advocate for the return of land ownership.
Thank you so much, Kayla. You raised several incredibly important points on many continents, especially land ownership by women. because women are farmers so much of the time, but yet they have the biggest trouble accessing land, right? I've put a few resources in the chat. I just wanted to mention to people. The first is a bit about the Green Wall happening in Africa and the UN's role in that. I'm not sure if this is one of the, it looks to me from afar like a really good solution, but I'm not so sure how it's playing out on the ground. So I will count on our sisters in Africa to let us know about that over time. I also put a link into the Angel Band Project, the organization I referred to earlier, and would just really encourage people to look up the whole localization movement that's burgeoning around the world. And I don't know, Kayla, if you can share maybe some web links in the chat for the organizations you're talking about, and I'll try and look for a few as well. Now, I saw Sister Eukarya raise a hand. Would you like to add a comment?
Yeah, one of the things I want to beg all of us, especially for Africa, because when you think about climate change and the pollution and everything, most of these things, Africa has just a tail end of the stick, but they are suffering more. There's also something that is very worrying in Africa, land grabbing, where multinational companies from rich world goes and take the land of the people. And when they take the land of the people, what do? They pollute the water, they pollute the air, and the people have they are not able to deal with this because they don't have the capacity. So I invite us all to help Africa and other parts of the world, but speak for us to these multinational companies that grab the land. The land in Africa is finished, the water is polluted, but and we are now saying ending the violence when all the sources of water, as I said, when we did the advocacy in Muimbi, people are suffering, women and children are suffering because of the multinational company coming to confiscate their land, their water, and polluting it. What do you expect? They begin to fight when they don't have enough to eat. So let's also think about what our multinational company, agro companies are doing in Africa. Thank you.
And Sister Eukarya, I will challenge us too to work together to make the connections. And I know you worked for Network, right? So we're good at networking because many of those same multinational companies, especially those based particularly in China and Saudi Arabia, are also buying up farmland in the US, particularly in the southwest part of the US, and depleting the water tables with farming and growing food for export, right? And or just hanging on to land. And then if people want to buy it back, they have to pay, several times more than the land had been worth when it was bought. So land ownership is a key question, and maybe we need to be looking at, I don't know if anyone has done a mapping project yet of some of these multinationals, right? And where they are buying land on different continents, because I've heard, especially in Africa, there are many, many Chinese-owned corporations that have bought land. Yes, so that would be a good thing. Very good. Well, I got a quick note from Sister Isabel that she wanted to talk about the way of doing good advocacy to get results and the ways that they approach government. And when we are advocating, it's very important and makes it easy to be accepted. And I would love to hear your experience, Isabel, in both the Democratic Republic of Congo and Uganda. Maybe, I don't know if that's something Sister Marie Josephine would wish to talk about. What we can also do, I've heard from our behind the scenes miracle worker here. One thing we definitely need to do before we wrap up today is give a big old shout out to our behind the scenes person. You think this is all working very, very smoothly. Well, the reason why is Drea Klein-Bergman, the Director of Programs for Citizens for Global Solutions. She is the person who has kind of worked to organize us all and done a lot of coaching especially of our students, and gotten everyone together and made us rehearse. So we're going to give a little shout out in the chat to Drea. But Drea, why don't you open it up so that anyone who would like to could ask a question? And that would be thing.
Yeah, if someone wants to speak, please in the chat let me know. I can give you permission to allow to talk. So if you're having any accessibility issues of the Q&A, we can also open it up that way where you can speak so we can hear your lovely voices. So just let me know. You should be able to raise a hand. If not, you can put your name in the chat.
Excellent. And Sister Maria Josephine, I see your hand up. Over to you, my friend. You'll need to unmute.
Yeah, but I wanted to say that I will hand over to Sister Isabel to talk about the ways of advocating with the government, because it's been actually more than 5 years that I'm out of the country. So I'm not on the ground right now, but working from a distance.
I see. Well, and it seems as if Sister Isabel's microphone has given out. This has happened on occasion. Sister Isabel, do you want to try and start talking? I don't think we can hear you. Yes, so
if not, I can talk because I don't know if that's what she wants to talk about. But when we went to sisters in Congo have not been trained in advocacy for the first time. So 2 years ago, Africa Faith and Justice Network went to Congo to train the sisters in advocacy. It was like, no, we cannot do anything because we have to get permission from the bishop. We have to, the government will not listen to us. This. But after 3 days of engaging the sisters with the issue, they were mad. They were angry. They said, no, we got to speak. If we don't speak, who is going to speak? And we marched to the Minister for Environment. We marched to the Minister for Health. We marched to the state governor, that's the Kinshasa governor, the man in charge of the whole Kinshasa. Immediately he saw the sisters coming. Oh my God, he was so scared. He said, what is provoking the church? What is that is provoking the church? And we said, the environment is provoking the church. We are the church, we're angry with what is going on in the environment. So after we sat down with him, we talked, he listened, and he promised that he must do something with the issue of environment. And he did. The first thing he did, I think a week after the visitation, was to organize a march against plastic in Kinshasa, which everybody came out to clean up the Kinshasa. Then that continued. So it has not stopped just because of the sisters' push that the government should do something. The same in Uganda. When the sisters were trained in advocacy, we started the training in 2018. When we started the training, the same resistance, because sometimes we think that the sisters' role in the society in Africa is to provide service. But what Africa Faith and Justice Network is doing is to move them, not just providing the service, but also to use that commitment to engage the structures that need to do something so that good thing will happen to the people. So when we went to Uganda, we talked about human trafficking. Isabel was also part. We invited her to come over from Congo to Uganda. So I think she witnessed what happened. We visited five government offices, the passport, because this is where the people get the passport, the Minister for Internal Affairs, Minister for Labor. I know when we met the Minister for Labor, he actually beg the sisters to pray for him because he is the one issuing license to companies that come to Uganda to recruit girls. So the first thing he said, please pray for me because if I do not issue this license, they will kill me. So we held hands together with him and we prayed for him and we said to him, the sisters are with you. Then we went to the Speaker of the House to say that Ugandan children are being trafficked and you people, what are you doing? You are the Speaker, can you do something? It was interesting. This was the first time she spoke up, holding the hands of the sisters and saying, sisters, and the media covered this. He said, sisters, it is the politicians that fuel trafficking in Uganda. Speak to the politicians. So now we have to invite all the government. Then we went to Minister of Foreign Affairs. He said to us, and Minister for Human Rights, they said to us, we government people do not talk to each other. Can you provide us a platform for all the government to come together to talk? And we did that. And we had the sisters had all the government representative in one place to set up a strategy for Uganda to fight human trafficking. The sisters are still working hard on human trafficking, and we know a lot of this has happened since then. So really, we believe strongly that when the voice of the sisters is strong, when they're trained on how to address the government, they create change. But the thing is, there's that resistance, but once they go above that resistance, oh my God, they move like fire. So thank you. That's
Sister Eukarya, those, I could not think of any better words for us to close with, except perhaps to add that when the youth are on fire, when the students at Trinity University are on fire, and they're right there in Washington, D.C., then we all benefit, right? Because you're right, government will listen. And as we act simultaneously to change the organizations or empower organizations at the grassroots to meet the needs of women right there on the ground, how can we do both and, right? Be working both at the local level and at the national level, and I dare say at the international level, using fora like the Commission on the Status of Women's NGO Forum, put together by NGO Committee on the Status of Women, to share. This was such a fabulous event. And I think what it says to us is more intergenerational conversation, I would dare say it would be interesting to even think about interfaith conversation, but even just within Catholicism, we see the richness that occurs here when we bring women together to talk and to share stories and to work and learn from each other. So big affirmation to you, Sister Isabel, to continue putting together, panels and projects like this, perhaps even for the upcoming high-level political forum or in September. Let's not wait another year to all come together again. Thank you all for your time. We are now at the top of the hour. Big thanks to Drea for her efforts behind the scenes, and deep thanks to each of you. And can you confirm this, Drea? Will this recording be shared to everyone who registered?
Absolutely. So, through Trinity, we'll make sure that there is a link. I will follow up with every person that attended and registered with that link so that they can, share and distribute with their networks.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, again, thank you everyone for joining, and have a beautiful day, a happy and safe St. Patrick's Day, especially if you're in New York City this weekend, and enjoy the rest of the Commission on the Status of Women NGO Forum. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you,
Thank
Sister
you.
Eukarya. Thank you,
Thank
Kyla.
you.
Thank you, Carl. Thank you, Beth. A big thank you to Alan and Drea. Have a nice and wonderful day and a good weekend.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks so
everyone.
much.
Have a
Bye,
great day.
everybody.
It was a great conversation.
Take
And
care.
thank you so much. I just want to let you know that we also have youth, Africa Faith and Justice Network youth, working with the sisters, closely with the sisters, doing advocacy. I mean, next time I can talk about what they have achieved. So maybe we have to keep connecting with one another. And
Yes,
when
of
the youth
course. Why
connects with
not?
the youth.
Yes, exactly. That would be a wonderful panel and connect them with the Trinity youth.
Yeah.
So we can all be
Yeah.
together.
Yes.
Yes, I'm sure a lot of us would be interested in working alongside you. I know a lot of the efforts you guys do really resonate with a lot of us, so we would be eager to help in whatever way we can.
Yes.
Very good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
you.
Have a great day, everyone.
And
Thank
you
you all,
too,
you too.
everyone. Have a nice weekend.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Take care. Bye-bye.